In this video, I'm going to show you how to do the middle section, and then we're going to add some beads. So I'm not actually going to show you this stitch pattern. I'm going to do the other beaded one. So there are two that just have beads. The beads are added using the crochet hook method, which means that they actually sit on the stitch. So I don't know whether you can see, but you can see that it actually sits on the stitch and they kind of sit upright. If you thread the beads on in advance and then you actually then slip them in front of the stitch, so they actually don't sit on the stitch, they kind of just sit in front of it and they sit sideways instead of upright. So when you add it with a crochet hook, they sit upright. When you add them and thread them on the yarn before you start knitting, they kind of lie down. So to do this, you need a crochet hook. So I'm using a 0.75 hook. As long as your hook will go through the beads you've chosen, that's fine. And I'm using size 6 seed beads from Debbie Abrahams. I'm going to go for this silver grey colour. So I'm just going to get a few out and put them here just to make it a bit easier. Okay, so the pattern is charted. So in the chart, each square is a stitch. And you're going to repeat the chart 4 times. So the chart has 10 stitches and you have 40 stitches on the needles. So we're going to repeat the chart twice on one half and twice on the other half. So we're going to start on row 1 with adding a bead. So to add a bead, you put the bead on the crochet hook, and then you make sure that you're holding the hook. First of all, depending on how you knit, if you knit like that, I don't recommend holding your crochet hook like that because you have less control over it. I recommend that you put your hand on top of the hook. That way you can, and you kind of hold them with your middle finger and your thumb, middle, index and ring finger. Middle finger, ring finger and little finger and your thumb. So you have your index finger free, and that way you can hold the bead with your index finger and it doesn't slide off. So hold your bead like your crochet hook like that. Make sure the hook is pointing upwards. If you can't see it, just feel for it on your finger. If your hook is pointing downwards, then the stitch will just slide off. And then take the stitch off with the crochet hook, let the stitch slide into the hook like that, and then grab the bead. So I'm now holding it with my ring finger and my little finger, and I've let go with my thumb and my index finger, so I can grab the bead. I'm pulling the stitch so it's tight, and I can grab the bead with those 2 fingers and push it down onto the stitch. There we go. And then I put the stitch back on the knitting needle, and now I'm going to knit it. So I'm going to knit that bead, and then I'm going to knit 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to add another bead. I'm actually going to add a bead, knit one, and then add another bead. So to make it a bit quicker, I'm actually putting 2 beads on my crochet hook at the time. So I'm going to take that stitch off, let it slide into the hook, grab the first bead. So I'm putting my fingers kind of behind that bead. I'm just going to slide that bead onto the stitch. If you struggle to get it over the hook part of your crochet hook, then you need a slightly smaller hook, or you need bigger beads. And then I'm going to knit one, and then I'm going to put another bead on. So I'm going to lift the stitch off, slide the bead on, push it down, and knit it. So you have to knit the bead after you've put it on. Then I'm going to knit 3. Okay, and then I'm going to do, that's the end of the repeat, and I'm going to start repeat again. At this time I'm going to actually put 3 beads on my hook, so I got enough to do the whole repeat. So I'm going to put the bead on, slide it down, knit it, knit 1, 2, 3. So I got the bead already on here. Just make sure the hook is pointing upwards. Now if you try and do it with the hook pointing downwards, it'll just slide. Hang on, let's see if I can do it. It'll just slide off like that. So you need to make sure the stitch slides into the hook, pull it tight. I hold my needle with the left hand, and I've kind of put my finger and my thumb here so I can kind of pull that stitch tight. If you've got just like a couple of stitches maybe or something on the right hand needle, or you're worried that it's going to slide out, then I kind of pinch it like that, so I'm holding onto the right hand needle as well. Push the stitch down onto the push the bead down onto the stitch, knit it. Where did I get to? Okay, knit one, and then I'm going to put another bead on. And then I'm going to knit 3. And then finish those stitches. I'm going to turn my knitting around, pull the stitches that are on the cable onto the needle tip, pull the stitches that are on the needle tip, pull those onto the cable, turn that needle around, and then first stitch is a bead, so I'm actually going to put 3 beads on my hook. Now you don't have to do 3 beads on the hook at the same time if you don't want to. I just do that because it's quicker. Just do one at a time to start with till you get the hang of it. Slide the stitch into the stitch into the hook, push the stitch down, put it back on the knitting needle, knit it, knit 3, pick up this, take the stitch off with the crochet hook, slide the stitch into the hook, push the bead on, put it back on the knitting needle, knit it, knit 1. Now when you push the bead down onto the stitch, try and be a bit firm with it. If you're too kind of cautious, then you probably won't get it onto the actual stitch. If it splits a little bit, like that one just split a little bit, I still got the stitch down properly. Just be careful when you put the stitch back on your knitting needle to make sure it's not, you're not splitting it or knitting it split, if that makes sense. Okay, 3, knit 3. I'm using size 6 seed beads and double knitting yarn, and normally I use size 6 beads for 4-ply yarn. I don't normally add beads to double knitting yarn very often. The problem with this method of adding beads is that 2 strands of the yarn goes through the bead. So if you're struggling, if you bought size 6 beads and you're struggling to get it through the 2 strands of the yarn through the bead, then you probably have got beads that are slightly too small. Now I don't know whether size 6 seed beads from all makes are exactly the same, or whether the hole is exactly the same, because it's the hole in the center of the bead that comes down to, really. I'm not a bead expert, really. Oh, that one I split a bit, so let me just, okay, so I split that stitch a little bit. Let me just take that off and make sure I can, there we go. Okay, so you've got to make sure that the bead is big enough to get 2 strands of the yarn through it. I use I'm using Debbie Abraham's size 6 beads, which are the ones that I sell in my online shop. That's the end of round 1. And I'm using double knitting yarn. The yarn I'm using is from Lang Merino 120. So Lang Merino 120. Now, not all double knitting yarn is the same thickness. So if you've got double knitting yarn that is thicker, you may struggle with the beads. I don't know, but I haven't got any problems. So if you find that your beads, if you're using the same beads as me and double knitting yarn and you're struggling, then it's probably because your yarn is a little bit thicker. So you just have to look for a thinner DK. Not all DK yarns are the same thickness. Right, let me see what I'm doing. So I'm knitting 3. So now the next bead is actually going to be on the row above between the 2 that I put in here on the first round. Let me just pour out a few more beads. Oops. Actually, one bead went down into the gap in my wooden board. I'll just move these beads out of the way a bit. I'm actually going to put more beads on, so I think I got 5 on there now. This is what I normally do when I knit with beads. I load up my crochet hook with as many beads as I can fit on it. I don't recommend doing that when you're new to knitting with beads, but after a little bit of time you can do that. It does save you a little bit of time. So what you have to be a bit careful about is that when you put your crochet hook down, you might find that the beads are falling off. That has happened quite a few times. I usually put the crochet hook, I load it up with beads, and I put it either on the side of my chair, knitting chair, or on my leg. And quite often, or not quite often, but occasionally I will kind of cough or move slightly, or the dog will jump in my lap or something like that, and then my beads go flying. So if you're short of beads, it might not be a good idea to do that because you may lose them. Okay. 1, 2, 3. So let me just show you one more. Okay, so let's turn it around. So flip my needles, pull the cable, slide the stitches onto the needle tip. The stitches I've just knitted, which is where the working yarn is, pull those onto the cable, turn my needle around, and then I'm going to knit one. Now that one, if I just hold my needles like that and let go of that needle, it's likely that that needle will slide out of that stitch, especially if you've got metal needles like me. So I do recommend, if that's the case, that you hold on. So what I'm doing is I'm pinching that right hand needle with my thumb and index finger, and that's keeping the left needle secure as well, just so I don't accidentally drop it. So I'm just going to finish this round. 1, 2, 3. One, 2, 3, and then I'm going to add another bead, and that's the end of the repeats. And then I'm going to go back to the beginning of that row, knit one, and add another bead. Oops. I find it easier to get the beads onto my crochet hook if I have them either on the table like this, normally because I need to sit in a comfy chair, lounge chair to knit. I tend to either put them in a tin or on a little bowl, not bowl, like a shallow bowl or a saucer, or little small dish was the word I was looking for. Most of the time I actually keep my beads, in a little tin, and then I can just say flip the lid open, take out the beads I want, and then shut the lid till the next time I need beads. Hang on, I think I did something wrong there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's the first 2 rounds. I'm not going to knit through every round of this pattern because it would make the video quite long, but that's what the first 2 rows look like. So I'll leave the link below to where you can download the pattern. The pattern is free, so go download it, and then I will come back. I will knit the rest of this pattern, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So I've finished the beaded pattern now, so you can see what that looks like. So there's a choice of 2 beaded patterns. This is one of them. Obviously I've got to do the decreases at the top, but that's what the pattern looks like when you finished all the beads. So that's the one beaded pattern, and that's the other one. Okay, so now go on to video number part 3, to see how to shape the top and finish off the bowl and how to stuff it.